Our lead story tonight, inflation at a new high. And Priyanshi, these figures coming just as the IMF had released a global forecast. It showed India growing less than forecast, but still pretty high amongst major economies. But these inflation figures are a dampener.
Right, Sonia, lots of worrying news that we are seeing on the economic front right now. Really concerning figures. Inflation rate is at a 5-month high. It has risen to the highest level since April this year. The inflation rate for September is at 7.4%, and the rate has risen for the second straight month. As you can see in that graph, inflation has been above the Reserve Bank's target, the 6% target for the whole year. A specifically concerning point is that rural India is being hit by higher prices more than urban India. Rural inflation is above urban inflation for the 4th straight month. Rural inflation is at 7.56% versus urban inflation that's at 7.27%. Now, what are the categories that are hurting the most? Highest inflation is in the fuel and light category at 10.4%. But what impacts the inflation rate the most is the food and beverage category with a weightage of 46%. And food inflation has risen from 7.6% in August to 8.6% in September. In fact, the rising food prices were even flagged by the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman recently in Washington, D.C. Let's listen in.
Energy, not just the price, but also the availability. The risks to sourcing of energy. All these are challenges which are not in the medium term, not in the long term, but also in the short term. So these are energy, fertilizer, are all becoming expensive. As a result, in some parts of the country, not so much for us, there is severe food insecurity.
Now, this food insecurity flag comes after inflation has been rising despite the Reserve Bank's efforts of hiking interest rates for 4 consecutive times. And inflation is still forecast to stay above RBI's 6% tolerance band for the whole year, as per the Reserve Bank itself. And it doesn't just mean rising prices, but it hurts growth too. An RBI working paper says that inflation above the threshold retards GDP growth rate and it makes growth more costly. And in fact, there's more worrying news for the economy that's coming in. Industrial production index has also contracted by 0.8% in the month of August. Inflation is not the only worry for us. This also adds, and a lot else has changed in the last 1 month. Rupee fell from 79 per dollar to 89 per dollar in just a matter of a month. Exports contracted by 3.5% in September year on year. The IMF said that 2023 will feel like a recession for many. Multiple agencies have cut India's GDP forecast for the current year. The World Bank cut it to 7.5% to 6.5% from 7.5%. IMF cut it to 6.8% from 7.4%. The Reserve Bank itself cut the forecast from 7.2% to 7%. Though the World Bank and the IMF's forecasts are still below 7%, the Finance Minister is confident that India's growth rate will be around 7% this financial year. But of course, inflation hurts that goal. One good news is that oil prices have fallen 28% from their March highs and are now down to close to $93 per barrel. This is leading to a growing call for the central government to cut fuel rates, because the rates rose with the crude oil prices but didn't come down alongside. Experts say that this cut is needed to bring some relief to the people.
Thanks, Priyanshi, for that update. But of course, at the moment, the government also worried about this rising subsidies. And in fact, the cabinet today cleared a 22,000 crore one-time grant to oil manufacturing companies. This is to offset the loss they've faced over the pricing of domestic LPG.
जो हमारी पेट्रोलियम कंपनीज हैं, पब्लिक सेक्टर अंडरटेकिंग की जो ऑयल मार्केटिंग कंपनीज हैं, जून 2020 से लेकर जून 2022 तक 22,000 करोड़ रुपए का जो इन्होंने खर्चा वहन किया है, वो वन टाइम ग्रांट भारत सरकार 22,000 करोड़ रुपए की दे रही है, ताकि आम नागरिक के ऊपर, देश की सामान्य जनता जो हमारे देश के नागरिक है, उसके ऊपर इसका बोझ ना पड़े। हम लोग इंपोर्ट तो करना ही पड़ता है और दुनिया भर में दाम मेरे से और आपसे छिपे किसी से नहीं है। अगर 300% वृद्धि की बात मैं दुनिया भर में कर रहा हूं, तो आप कल्पना कर ही सकते हैं कि अगर कुल मिलाकर देखा जाए तो कितना प्रभाव पड़ता सीधा जनता पर। कहीं ना कहीं जो हम लोग सब्सिडी वाला पार्ट है, या जो दबाव इनके ऊपर ऑयल मार्केटिंग कंपनीज के ऊपर आया, जो दाम दुनिया भर में बढ़े, उसको रिकवर करने के लिए हमने वन टाइम ग्रांट दी ताकि इनके ऊपर बोझ उसका ना आए। जनता के ऊपर तो बचाए ही बचाए, लेकिन ऑयल मार्केटिंग कंपनीज के भी 22,000 करोड़ रुपया बहुत बड़ी अमाउंट होती है। उनकी बैलेंस शीट भी खराब ना, उनके वर्किंग पर भी, काम करने पर भी प्रभाव ना पड़े, लेकिन कुल मिलाकर जनता को अपनी सेवाएं भी देते रहें, उसमें बाधित ना हो, उनके ऊपर भी दाम ना ज़्यादा पड़े, उसके लिए भी कदम उठाए गए हैं।
That coming, of course, as new inflation figures out today. But meanwhile, moving to a story that really has shocked India. And this is a story of human sacrifice in one of India's most progressive states, Kerala. Sneha has more details on that. Sneha, human sacrifice in a state like Kerala, it actually seems like a horrific story of a perversion, as the police are describing it.
Absolutely, Sonia, and the horrific details of this is only set to come out even more, because according to the probe that is still underway, police has said the accused, at least one of the accused in their confession statement, have said that private parts of one of the victims was actually cooked and consumed because one of the accused in this case was made to believe that that would be good for his health and for longevity. So that's a shocking detail which is coming out. Several other such instances. In fact, if you look at the pits that have been found outside the house, you have multiple pits, around 4 pits, out of which several body parts of these 2 victims were literally recovered. Let's get into the details. 2 women, 49-year-old Roslyn and 52-year-old Padma, victims of a shocking and almost unbelievable human sacrifice. This is the main accused, Mohammed Shafi or Rashid, a man who the police say is a psychopath and pervert who enjoys inflicting pain. Earlier this year, Shafi reached out to Bhagwal and Laila, 2 other accused in this case, a couple who live near Tiruvalla. Shafi's motive was sadism. His accomplice Bhagwal and Laila were convinced that all their debts would magically disappear with human sacrifice. The 2 victims in this case, who disappeared within 4 months of each other, were independently lured by Shafi with the promise of financial gain for acting in pornographic videos. Bhagwal and Laila run a massage parlor, and Bhagwal, locals say, is a CPM supporter. The party has distanced itself, saying he is neither a party member nor an office bearer.
Our investigation further revealed that this is not the only case, but there has been another incident in June of 2022 in another police station in Ernakulam rural district. He's raped a 75-year-old woman and inflicted very grievous injuries on her, even including her private parts. So the same modus operandi was committed in these 2 cases also.
The police now believe that the entire murder was part of a ritual. Their throats slit, their private parts were mutilated. In fact, the first victim, Roslyn, was dismembered. 53 parts of her body have been recovered from multiple pits in the home of the accused couple. The police say that they cracked this story on the basis of a person missing report when Padma went missing in September. They tracked her missing phone to Shafi, who they arrested. Police say one of the accused have confessed to cannibalism, but they need to probe this further. DNA tests of the bodies would be done. With camera person SP Babu, Sneha Koshi for NDTV.
An absolutely shocking story there coming out of Kerala. We'll bring you more updates as we have them. But moving to the other big headlines, 6 years later, guess what the Supreme Court's currently hearing? Well, it's whether demonetisation was actually carried out properly, whether it was justified. Let's go across to Arvind for more details. So, Arvind, interesting that Chief Justice Lalit, in his short 2-month tenure, is hearing demonetisation, which has been on the back burner for 6 years.
Yeah, Sonia, after almost 6 years, Supreme Court Constitution Bench led by Justice Abdul Nazir is hearing a petition looking into the constitutional validity of this particular exercise, by which in 2016, all 500 and 1,000 rupee notes were withdrawn. So several petitions, almost 58 petitions were filed in Supreme Court challenging the constitutional validity and also the procedural lapses in this entire exercise, by which almost 86.54% of currencies that were in circulation were withdrawn. So in fact, today Centre told the Supreme Court, saying that nothing survives in this matter and this has become purely an academic exercise, and Supreme Court Constitution bench, that is a 5-judge bench, should not waste time on it. But Supreme Court said that only after the hearing the court can come to a conclusion whether it has become purely an academic purpose or whether there is something merit in this particular case. And also senior advocate P. Chidambaram, appearing for one of the petitioners, said that this particular entire exercise earlier, though in 1970s and also in 1940s, similar exercise were carried out, but in those cases there were a separate parliament statute that was brought in to bring out demonetization exercise, but this time it was carried out through RBI Act, and that's why he said that this is purely unconstitutional, and that's why he wanted Supreme Court to look into this exercise. And also very importantly, P. Chidambaram also brought to the court's notice that the RBI's agenda note and also the RBI's board meetings agenda note and also the cabinet note have not been made public as of this moment, and Supreme Court should ask for those records to look into whether there are any procedural lapses in this particular whole exercise, and that's why Supreme Court has asked Center to keep all these documents ready, and Supreme Court will hear it again.
Interesting detail then, as you pointed out, also an ex-finance minister P. Chidambaram is arguing this case, but is it just, as Solicitor General Tushar Mehta said, an academic exercise given that it's now all done and dusted? Let's follow that case for more. But meanwhile, what's the latest on the Congress presidential elections? Well, presidential candidate Mallikarjun Kharge is in some controversy after his reply to this question on whether Rahul Gandhi or he will be the 2024 prime ministerial face for the Congress.
देखो, पहले तो मेरा संगठन चुनाव इसमें आया हूँ. हमारे में कहावत है, मैं बहुत जगह रिपीट करता हूँ, बकरी ईद में बचेंगे तो मोहर्रम में नाचेंगे. पहले तो मेरा चुनाव खत्म होने दो, मैं अध्यक्ष बनने दो, उसके बाद देखेंगे. धन्यवाद.
Well, as the BJP is pointing out, there's no dancing at Muharram because it's not a celebration. It is, of course, a time of mourning for Muslims. Meanwhile, in other news, well, one by-election in Andheri East has become a huge political issue in Maharashtra. Now, support from the CPI, so left support coming to the right-wing Sena, the Uddhav Thackeray Sena, and other small parties are coming forward to support him. This has still not decided whether the BJP will field a candidate or whether the Shinde Sena will field a candidate in this by-election.
Ahead of the first electoral battle between the two Senas, the Shinde government has stalled the candidate of Uddhav Sena. Rutuja Latke was seen waiting to meet the municipal commissioner. She needs the officer, who is not a politician, to accept her resignation, which she had submitted a month ago. This will allow her to contest the assembly by-election on 3rd November. The Uddhav Shiv Sena has appealed to the High Court, which will hear the case tomorrow. The deadline for nomination papers is 14th October.
ऋतुजा लटके के बारे में हम माध्यम से ही सुन रहे हैं कि उनको शिंदे गुट में जाने के लिए उनके ऊपर दबाव है. उनको ये कहा जा रहा है कि हमारे पास आ जाओ, आपका रेजिग्नेशन तुरंत मंजूर होगा. कोई लोगों ने, पत्रकारों ने मुझे ये भी बताया कि उनको मिनिस्ट्री की ऑफर दी जा रही है. जब पूरे के पूरा कानून पूरा किया जाता है तो अगर कोई कानून में गलती है तो रिजेक्ट करना चाहिए. रिजेक्ट भी नहीं कर रहे, पास भी नहीं कर रहे. उनके बात करने के टाइम तो पता चल रहा है, कुछ बातें हमको ऑफ द रिकॉर्ड बता भी देते हैं, लेकिन इसका जो दिख रहा है वो ये तो स्पष्ट हो रहा है कि दबाव में ये सब चल रहा है.
The BMC Commissioner Iqbal Singh Chahal says he has much more time. I can take a decision on it within 30 days. Resignation letter has been submitted on 3rd October. There is no government pressure on me. The high-stakes by-poll today saw the Communist Party of India pledging its support to the Uddhav Sena, a right-wing party. The Deputy Chief Minister spoke up on the allegations against his government.
महानगर पालिका के इस्तीफे के बारे में उनके अपने नियम होते हैं, उनको उसकी पूरी स्वायत्तता है. सरकार उसमें कोई हस्तक्षेप नहीं करती, इसलिए हमारे हस्तक्षेप का कोई सवाल नहीं है. जो बड़ा साहब की शिवसेना है और भारतीय जनता पार्टी है, ये दोनों मिलाकर ये चुनाव लड़ने वाले हैं.
इतने नीचे लेवल पे जाके काम करने वाले शिंदे साहब कभी भी नहीं, ना उन्होंने जिंदगी में किया है. मैं उद्धव ठाकरे नीचे किसी को तकलीफ देने के लिए कौन से लेवल पे जा सकते हैं, मैं एक नहीं 100 एग्जाम्पल दे सकता हूं. अब शिंदे साहब ने अगर किसी को तकलीफ दी है आज तक पॉलिटिकल राइवलरी में, तो आप एक एग्जाम्पल दिखाइए.
The last date to file the nomination for the Andheri East Assembly by-election is on 14th of October, but it is still not clear who will be the candidates contesting from this election. And only after a decision is made by the Bombay High Court on Thursday, there will be some clarity regarding this by-election. In Mumbai, with camera person Ashok Mahadik, Sohit Mishra, NDTV.
Well, some international news, both the United Kingdom and Germany are looking at lower than expected growth, with the German finance minister saying that they're expected to hit negative growth after the next 2 quarters. This comes as Russia's President Vladimir Putin has said that they're ready to resume gas supplies to Europe. He said all Europe has to do is turn on the tap.
В приличных компаниях говорят, highly likely, все понятно. Все ясно, кто там за этим стоит и кто выгодоприобретатель. Можно теперь действительно в больших масштабах навязывать европейским странам природный сжиженный газ из Соединенных Штатов, который явно уступает по конкурентоспособности российскому трубопроводному газу. Ведь цены на американские СПГ значительно выше, это всем хорошо было и раньше известно, ну а сейчас тем более.
Diese schwere Energiekrise droht sich zu einer Wirtschafts- und im Verbund damit Sozialkrise auszulösen, auszuwachsen. Und wenn man sich die Reden von Wladimir Putin anschaut oder anhört in den Übersetzungen, dann ist das genau sein Ziel. Mit hohen Preisen, mit hohen Energiepreisen und einer hohen Inflation die wirtschaftspolitische Stabilität Deutschlands, Europas, seiner Gegner zu zerstören und damit das gesellschaftliche Fundament brüchig zu machen, gegebenenfalls zu destabilisieren.
So a bad economic picture there for Europe. Let's go across to breaking news coming in this evening from Bengaluru. A statement issued by EdTech major Byju's indicates that there will be major layoffs coming soon. Shija, what are the details?
Well, that's a big breaking that's coming in now. Byju's has also, in fact, issued a press release talking about out of their 50,000 strong workforce, they are looking forward to lay off at least about 2,500. That is the 5% of their, the workforce that they're going to talk about. And also what's more important is that it is India's most valued edtech, where they go on to talk about because of the mounting losses, because clearly remember, Sonia, we're talking about just about last year, they had projected 48% increase in its revenue. But now this year around, when the fiscal year ended, it shows a 48% drop in the revenue, which means they have suffered a loss of 4,000 crores, 500 crores at least. Just the previous fiscal year, it had reported at least about 262 crore rupees. But this is a huge loss. Due to the huge loss, right now, Byju's is planning to restructure its company and also planning to bring down its workforce as well.
Shija, thanks so much for those updates. So not good news for, of course, jobs with those news of that layoffs. In other headlines, well, a major rain surplus in parts of the northeast and also the worry over this unseasonal October rain actually causing major crop damage in Uttar Pradesh.
Extreme weather events in the month of October. In Arunachal Pradesh, a surplus of 625% has been reported in terms of the way it's rained in the last 24 hours. In Assam, surplus rain of 354% has been recorded in the last 24 hours alone. In Anantapur, a surplus of 334% of the way it's rained in the last 24 hours alone. Incessant rain and water release from Nepal has resulted in massive flooding in Uttar Pradesh, which in turn has resulted in crop damage being reported by farmers. 200 villages have been affected by floods in Uttar Pradesh as rain continues.
And from Himachal Pradesh, where in the Lahaul and Spiti district, there has been the season's first snowfall. This has come in the higher reaches of the district, and it's normal this year. It usually starts on the 1st of October. So it's not untimely, but the major change in weather will be felt when it starts to snow in the lower reaches, which is expected so far in November. President Draupadi Murmu is on a visit to Tripura, where she was actually met by an all-woman guard of honor by the Tripura police on her arrival there at Agartala. Also, what is interesting is her interaction with tribal women, tea workers, and of course, a poignant moment there as well for President Murmu.
चलिए आगे बढ़ो, है ना, बड़ी वैसे हो गया और आप लोग अच्छे हैं। ये केवल बेटियों को स्कूल भेजते हैं कि नहीं? कुड़ी किधर भेजते हैं ना, बेटी बेटा दोनों को स्कूल भेजिए।